Right, so you may notice something a bit different about my bookshelves right now. I went a little crazy yesterday. I was a bit bored, I think, and I decided, because I'd seen a video from Jack Edwards where he turned all of the books that he'd read inwards so that he had like a good visual indication of his read and not read shelves, I decided to do the same thing. So all of the books that are like face in are books I've read, the ones that are face out are ones I haven't read yet. I didn't really do it for any reason other than just to have a look to see. It's about as much as I thought. I tend to be, I think, about 50-50 on books I've read versus books I haven't read in the ones that I've owned, because I unhaul fairly regularly in books that I don't, love. Also, but there has also been, historically, I've unhauled because I just don't have the space. And the reason I'm filming today is because later today I have another bookshelf coming. I was trying to hold off on buying bookshelves until I moved because I don't really have the space for another bookshelf here, but I bought a little like one that's about this high that's going to go in my living room, that in the future will go into whatever is going to become my study / work from home space. And yeah, I figured I might as well buy it because I do have a little bit of space in my living room for a short bookshelf. So whilst it's being delivered today, it's being delivered between 2:15 and 3:15. So in the meantime, I figured I'm going to take off all the books that I'm planning on putting in that little bookshelf, and then seeing what space I have left and starting to try and organise these a bit more, because like I don't like how heavily like filled some of these shelves are, just due to the fact that I don't have space for what I currently have. And I thought I'd, film myself doing it. For reference, currently my shelves are separated by genre, and I'm probably going to stick to that, but I may be less stringent because I do have a handful. I say a handful. I have one shelf down there that has my plays and poetry collections in that isn't, super full. So the plan is, in the future, once I hit the end of a genre, I'm just going to put a thing in between it to indicate that another section has started, which hopefully means that all of my book nooks that don't currently have space will be put on my shelves. Anyway, starting from this top shelf, because the new bookshelf is going to contain all of my non-fiction and reference books and things, because it's going to go into an office. All of my D&D books, these are my then D&D notebooks from when I'm a DM or when I'm a player. This is another roleplay system that I've got. These are some fan fictions that I bound myself because I wanted to try giving bookbinding a go. I don't know what I'm going to do with these because they're not very well bound, and they're my own fan fictions that I wrote. I might chuck these, I don't know, because I can always do it again. These are my books. If you didn't know, I have written and self-published a queer fantasy duology. This is book 1, The Blessed and the Cursed, and this is book 2, The Shadow of Nature. If you're worried about the fact that they are different sizes, that's not the case anymore. You shouldn't be able to buy them in this size anymore. They should both be this slightly shorter size. I did that for 2 reasons. One being that the cover image is crisper on the smaller size, and 2, this is closer in height to most mass-published paperbacks, so it would fit on like a shelf better. But anyway, I don't know if the copies of my book are going to stay in here or go onto the other shelf. I don't know yet, but these are my D&D dice and everything. Those are also going to go on the other shelf, which means that I've basically already reclaimed one small shelf. I move the cat toy out of the way. This is mostly, these are my secondary school art books that I still have. They're going to be all moved. This is a whole bunch of artwork that I've bought that I don't have like frames for and stuff. Sketchbooks. This I believe is my it's a risk assessment course notes from something I went on. These are theatre like pamphlets from when I've gone to see shows. So I've got Les Mis. I have, what's that one? Oh, The Sound of Music. I have The Lion King. I'd like to collect these, so they will also be going into the new bookcase, as will this massive copy history book of World War II. This Way of the Wizards is not a non-fiction book, so that's going to stay here and probably just move to another shelf. As will these little books that I have from when I was little, that I didn't want to get rid of, because they're still very cute. But again, that's another sort of whole little shelf that I can reclaim for myself. I also don't like the fact that because I have some books that are really big, my shelves aren't even. So hopefully once this is gone, once this is moved, I can change my shelf sizes so that I think this one here is shorter than the rest of them. That would make sense. All of my memoirs are going to stay here. I couldn't explain to you why, but I separate my memoirs from the rest of my non-fiction. It feels right in my brain. Which, moving on, this bottom shelf is all non-fiction, so all of that's going to move all the way up to here. That's my last tarot reading book, and then these are fairy tales and mythology. They're going to stay here. But again, probably move to a different shelf. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out all the books that I want on the new bookshelf, and I'm just going to put them on my sofa in the living room. I think the tripod's wobbling, either that or my eyes have started going weird. Anyway, and then that way I can see what my extra space is. I do also have a cupboard that has some folders in it that I'd like to move onto the bookshelf, mostly because then I might have enough space to put my board games in that cupboard, which would then free up the top of these bookshelves. Because I am contemplating getting a couple of the bookcase extenders that IKEA do, to utilise this sort of dead space up here. Until I've decided whether or not, I don't know if it'll fit actually in. I don't know how tall they are, is what I'm trying to say. But until then, it means that big books that are kind of messing up my shelf spacing can just rest on the top. I am also, I dislocated my shoulder in my sleep last night, this one here, and it went straight back in, but I'm aware that I could be making the pain in my shoulder worse by doing all this. Either that, or I will unpinch the nerve that is currently in my shoulder by doing some heavy lifting. So we'll see how this goes. This could be an endeavour that just stops halfway through, I don't know. But yes, all of these are going to get turned around the correct way as well, because this wasn't a permanent thing, it was just something I wanted to do, knowing that I was going to be moving all the books anyway. So I'm going to stop jabbering, and I'm going to just move all of this, and obviously, speed it up for you guys. I also don't know if you can see the bottom of these, so I might just disappear from frame for a second, I don't know. I'm going to show you possibly I haven't read all of these leadership books yet, because, but I'm going to show you the one that I started with purely for the title, and that's How Not to Be a Leadership Dickhead. Yeah. I mean, they're not all leadership books. I also have like one on equality, diversity and inclusion. I have a couple like that because DEI is sort of one of my passions, I guess. Okay, that is all of the books moved. I think my next challenge is to empty that cupboard, because there are other things that aren't going to go on bookshelves. Like there's it's also the thing that has like a bucket with a sponge in it and things like that. It's a bit of like a messy cupboard, but I want to then turn it into the board game cupboard. I don't think I'm going to film that because I don't see much point in it. So yeah, that's everything moved. That didn't take as long as I thought. I'm a bit not worried, but the fact that I didn't move as many books as I thought is making me think. So this is the current state of my sofa. I can still, sit over there, so that's fine. It's taken up the entirety of like the chaise lounge bit. But the place I'm planning on, I mean, I do have this bookcase, but it's the oldest bookcase I own. This is like my childhood bookcase, and it is not particularly sturdy anymore, which is why it just has ornaments on it, because I am fairly certain if I put books on that thing, it would collapse. The place I'm planning on putting the bookcase is, depending on how wide it is, I was going to put it here, but I think with the shelf and everything, I might just move the cat food there and have the bookcase next to the other bookcase. Although that could, depending on how tall it is, just entice Pippi to get onto that bookcase. I think it might be a catch-22, because if I pan further this way, if the bookcase is there, it's also right next to Pippi's cat tree, which means that he could jump onto it and then like up there. And I do not, like, I put this shelf up and it is fairly sturdy, but Pippi is also a fairly sturdy cat. So either way, there could be a few crashes in the future. I don't know. That's the cupboard that currently has. I mean, I guess I could. It has my recipe books and like photo albums, and then a bunch of folders down here. It also has cleaning supplies and the Hoover. So I think we'll probably end up with 1.5 shelves for board games and things, because I can put that bucket under the sink. I don't really know why it's there, to be honest. Right, so I was actually able to put all of the board games into the cupboard with room to spare. I could keep the vacuum in there. I realise now why I didn't put the bucket under the kitchen sink, and that's because I have a water meter under the sink as well, and where that is, it doesn't really fit, but it doesn't keep the door open too much. And as I'm not planning on being here for that much longer, it's not gonna bother me all that much, I don't think. So I've shoved it under the sink anyway. I think before I start putting things up there, I think I need to dust it, because taking some of the board games down, yeah, there's a lot of dust. I also didn't film it because I was pretty convinced that as soon as I turned the camera on, because of like having to reach up and everything, I was pretty convinced I was going to end up dropping it on my head, and I didn't want to catch that on camera. I didn't drop any on my head, but it was a close call a few times. I do have a step stool, and I probably should have just brought that in and used that, but I'm going to need to get it now so that I can dust the top. I've kept my, I think you can just about see it, I have a little old-fashioned leather suitcase up there that's just going to stay up there, and my little keepsake box is also going to stay up there. But I think it's time for me to, 1, dust the top of those shelves, and 2, start moving things around and figure out if, for example, I have 2 spaces where the shelves don't match the rest of the shelves. The first one I showed you, which is down at the bottom, and the second one is here because of this book. The thing is, the only thing on this shelf is my like Harry Potter books, and that shelf is going to stay as it is. And this is my graphic novel and comic shelf, so those do tend to be a bit taller. So I might leave that shelf as is anyway. I don't know. I had a little bit of a break and some lunch and dusted the top of my bookshelves. They weren't as dusty as I thought they'd be, actually. That was kind of surprising. I think every other surface in my house was probably dustier than the top of my bookcases. I have a half an hour before a training course that I am a part of starts, so I have a bit of a plan. I'm going to start with putting the big books on the top, and then I've decided to, instead of doing what I have been doing, which is viewing each bookcase as like an individual, I'm going to start using them like it's like a sweeping long thing instead. And in the spirit of that, I guess, I'm going to dedicate the bottom two shelves to the two genres that I have the most of. So the bottom set of shelves is going to be all my classics. I will probably then amalgamate, if I have space, the plays and the poetry collections into that, because most of those are like Shakespeare and stuff. Then the next level, and possibly the level above it, is going to be fantasy, because I have a lot of fantasy. After that, I don't have that much of a plan. I think the fantasy will then move into more magical realism type stuff that I wouldn't consider like heavy fantasy. We will then probably go into sci-fi, and then we'll do like thrillers and horrors together. Probably keep my historical fiction retellings and stuff together as well. I think because of the amount of Danmei I now own, Danmei is going to need to have its own shelf. And probably a bit, because I'm planning on buying more. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But first things first, big books on the top. And I'm smart this time, and I have my little footstool. It is a dream of mine someday to, I think I'll probably do it if I get the add-ons, is to have a library ladder. But we're not doing it for in here. There isn't enough space. I'm gonna put them here so that I still have space if I need to move into that as well. I think maybe I don't want to get them too high, because obviously I'm not quite tall enough to reach them if I stack them too high, so I think that's fine. I made a note of the books that are on my TBR cart, because I'm taking them off the cart to put them on the shelf so that I know that there is a space for them once I'm done, because there would be nothing more annoying than getting all of these books nicely ordered and then realising that I have like 20 books that just don't have a space anymore. I stopped filming as I went because it didn't seem like it would be particularly interesting to look at, but I have now finished reorganising the bookshelves, and I am very happy to say that I almost have enough space. I'm clearly going to need to buy another full bookshelf when I move, but for now, I have enough space. I'm glad I only have two, like, sideways stacks. I have a few just sitting on the top because they wouldn't quite fit in on their shelf. But I will do a very quick tour, because just as I was putting the last of the books on, the doorbell rang and my new bookshelf was delivered, so I'm going to need to put that together now. However, we'll start from the top and we'll work our way. So I've left my books here. I've got my Kindle there as sort of like a little divider. I've then got some middle grade. I think they would all be classed as middle grade. Just there. I've got the rest of my much younger books at the top. Hold on, I will step back. So I've got all of the big books, as I said, but then also my little children's books, and I've put all of my book nooks up here because I did not have space for them on my shelves. But all that's done really is make me go, oh look, I have space there for more book nooks, because I'm slightly obsessed with them. Moving on, I wanted to keep all of my Darren Shan together because they always have been, and because I know they take up more than a shelf by themselves, I've just kept them stacked like that. Moving into some more like young adult kind of horror-y stuff with the Lockwood & Co books, and my little my little Totoro and my Queer Kiwi from the Queer Kiwi YouTube channel. I love that plushie. They've just managed to squidge in there. And then I moved into my thrillers section. So they've all just about managed to fit. I didn't have any bleed over after I changed the stack like that. My Harry Potter books are just always on that shelf. I mean, I don't read them anymore, but I also don't particularly want to get rid of them because this was like the 15th anniversary edition that my mum got me as a present, so it would feel weird getting rid of them. Because I've been going along and then along again, I'm just gonna swoop back here. Sorry if you get motion sickness. Here is my historical fiction. I have them ordered as best I can from like the earliest time period it's set in all the way to later. So we go from, Roman invasion all the way through to here's like the World War II area. So that's where I put my portion of the Berlin Wall, all the way up to the 1990s. And then I got the little thought putting one of my egg timers there. Or I guess it's not an egg timer. I don't know how much time this one actually does, but it's an hourglass, which then goes straight into my literary fiction section. This is just ordered in, size, so we've got all of like the hardbacks and stuff going through, and that filled up that entire shelf. And then my graphic novels and comics stayed in their regular shelf because they fit quite nicely. In fact, they fit with more space now that 100 Nights of Hero has been put up there, because that was the big one. Back over here I have my mythological retellings, mostly Greek with don't know which one that one is. I know that Joanne M. Harris wrote the Gospel of Loki, but I don't think this one is a Norse mythology retelling. I'm not entirely sure. But then I have my lovely Athena statue that I got in Greece. I have my Achilles and Patroclus candle, and my literary tarot deck is there. Got my Danmei collection. So Varys All, Mojang Tangju. So we've got Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation into Scumville and Self-Saving System, and the copies of Heaven Officials Placing that I currently have. I don't have number 3 because it's delayed shipping, and I don't have 7 and 8. But there should be just enough space for all of that to fit in there. A bit of a jump in terms of genre, but it was the best place for it to fit. This is all of my horror. I think the line between horror and thriller is a bit blurred, but I think these would all be just classed as horror. Moving into sci-fi. All of my lovely Becky Chambers and everything there. And then, because I had space, it goes into my... These are all, blanked on that. Memoirs. Apart from this one, The Five is a non-fiction about the victims of Jack the Ripper. So that might move, and I might move that into my new bookcase once I've built it. I'm not sure. It all fits nicely at the moment. So I'm okay with it being there for the time being. And this is where we start on my fantasy shelves, which this is where, I guess, the left to right breaks down, because I started from the bottom to the top, and then at around about, like, here, I then went from the top down. So, this is technically the end of the fantasy run. The fantasy starts on this shelf, so we'll just go through this for a second. Starts with all of my Lord of the Rings and Tolkien verse, including my Lothlorien candle, into other... more, I haven't particularly split my fantasy into heavy fantasy and light fantasy. I've just gone by size again and kept the series together. I've got my Starless Sea candle next to the Starless Sea there. I do have 2 sets of the Graceling. Oh, these are not in the right order. The Graceling books. These are the covers that I wanted. These are my original ones, and the only reason I've kept hold of them is I don't know if you can get these anymore, so I'm kind of a bit loath to just part with them. Behind my little jade tree here is my Priory of the Orange Tree and A Day of Fallen Night. onto still some more heavy fantasy there. All of my Alex C. Harrow books. This is it all still counts as fantasy. This one here is very much magical realism, but it fit nicely in this slot, which is why I've kept it there. And Trudy Canavan still pretty much has a shelf to herself, apart from my His Dark Materials book. Again, fit nicely in there. Which, moving up, brings us to sort of the end of the fantasy. This is all of my Terry Pratchett. Moving into this. Senlin Ascends is like steampunk kind of fantasy, slightly. I wouldn't classify it as sci-fi, which is what's here. But I'm not entirely convinced what genre that one falls into. And then I've still got all my TJ Klune together, so we have some middle grade here next to the adult fiction. But I wanted to keep him together. Some of my nice, very old, like 1980s fantasy. I need to finish this series. I read The Witches of Eliane when I first bought it. Sorry, Leon. And then I couldn't find book 2 for ages. As you can probably tell, there's Sir Leon there. This one, and this one I got at the same time at like a second-hand car boot sale. These ones I had to scour the internet for, so these are a lot better quality. But because I didn't have number 2, I read this one, and then years later I found this. So I need to reread this series. Going into like young adult fantasy, I've got my Grishaverse books, the Great Library series, which I need to finish, which then moves us into just young adult itself. We've got sort of a lot of my young adult dystopian and intermingled just some more young adult, like more fantasy based things. Straight into young adult literary, I guess. And then we have my fairy tale retellings up to here. And then this is my small romance section that originally I was going to have next to my Danmei books. But again, it fits nicely there because I don't have the biggest romance section because it's just not particularly my thing. And that is my shelves, nicely ordered, including my TBR and my books that I need to do a haul video on. However, I know I have at least 5 or 6 more books coming from the haul that I ordered, so finding places for them might be an issue. But I am much happier with the way this looks currently. Already some of the shelves, like this one and this one, were starting to bow quite a bit. That one's still a bit bowed, just from the sheer number of books on it. And they've already straightened out a little bit in the amount of time it took me to take all of the books off and then reorganise things. Bookcase. And it's fitted? Yeah, that's the correct word. Managed to fit everything in with a tiny little bit of room to spare. I also have a little bit of a gap at the top. It's mostly concealed by my prayer flag, so I am hoping that it's not too enticing to the cat, but I am also hoping that this has weighed everything down quite a bit. Yes, I unfortunately have done the thing I always do when I get deep into a project, is that I have not thought of, food or anything like that, and so now I am, you can't really see it, I'm shaking because I have very low blood sugar, and I don't have the energy to think about what I need to eat for dinner, so I'm probably going to have a not super nutritious dinner now, just whatever is quick. But yeah.